I'm Mike Hannewald, field agronomist with Beck's Hybrids. And unfortunately, even as we move into the second half of May, there's a lot of fields across the northern half of Ohio, especially that look like the one I'm standing in. They're wet and haven't even been touched yet this spring because we get continued rains and haven't seen some good long drying windows and good planting windows. And so I wanted to share some thoughts as we move into a delayed planting environment and what things should we change as we plant late, and then what things should we not change. So to start off, I want to really focus on the importance of planting conditions. Just because we're getting late doesn't make planting into the right conditions any less important. We did a study back in 2017 at our London PFR site where we looked at this exact question. And so what they did was they planted one day when it was a touch too wet into marginal conditions. They came back two days later and planted again when conditions were good for planting. What they found then was they tracked the emergence. And so when the first plant emerged, they started a clock and tracked 24 hours. And then they went and flagged all the plants that had emerged within 24 hours. And then marked the rest of the plot as each day of emergence. And you can see that chart on your screen. So you can see in the marginal conditions on the left side of the graph, only 15% of the plants emerged within the first 24 hours. Whereas when planted into ideal conditions, almost 70% of the plants emerged in that first 24-hour period. And then it actually took fewer days for the good planting for those plants to emerge. Now, what does this mean as far as yield goes? Well, in April, when we plant into poorer conditions, we saw that the delayed emergence cost us about 20 bushels for those late emerging plants. And so in that situation, when you plant into the poor conditions, you have a higher percentage of your stand are those late emerging plants that then cost us that 20 bushels. However, when you get to June, the June planted corn, those late emerged plants cost 85 bushels. Why the big difference? Well, think about it. In June, we are a lot warmer than what we were back in April. And so this extra warmth accumulates more heat units, and there's a lot more growth in a 24-hour period. So those plants that emerged first were that much further ahead of the ones that emerged late, and you're more likely to have runt plants that are significantly behind that cost you in yield. And so planting into good conditions minimizes the number of those late emerging plants that would have that 85 bushel penalty that we saw when we did this trial back in 2017. Next thing I want to talk about as we look forward is, do we need to adjust to a shorter season hybrid? That's a big question. We get nervous about, is it going to mature in time? How wet's my corn going to be in the fall? Should we switch to shorter maturity to still get drier corn in the fall, even with later planting? Well, we did a 3-year PFR study at multiple locations that looked at this exact question. They went out during the first week of June and planted 4 different hybrids ranging from 96-day maturity all the way up to 112-day maturity. Now, I've adapted the numbers from this study that was done a few years ago to kind of fit our current economic situation. So I recalculated the return on investment using $4 corn as our selling price, which is a conservative estimate for fall corn. And then I also used 6 cents a point for a drying charge. That might be higher than what it costs you to dry, and maybe it's higher than what an elevator's charging, but I wanted to, again, be on the conservative side. And even when you factor in the additional moisture and the additional drying charges, the fuller season corn at 112 day was still the most profitable hybrid to grow. And so if you can handle wet corn bushels in the fall, sticking with your plan of full season corn can be the smart way to go. The one exception to that is if you simply get into a position of where there's not enough time for that to reach black layer and mature before the first expected frost. That would be the time that you might make a change. So if you're planting something extremely late for your area, you might consider changing. But if you're within a reasonable window of your geography, you could stick with that fuller season corn. If you want to do some specific calculations, there's 2 resources there on your screen. Number one is our farm server tool, and the growth stage modeling that offers can help you run some different scenarios and evaluate, does it make sense to stick with your current plan? And then also, if you simply just search online the GDD tool, you'll find a tool that you can go in and compare different scenarios. One other thing to think about is that for every day past May 1st, corn will actually shorten its growing degree day requirement by 6.8 per day after May 1st. And so make sure that you're factoring that in as well, that corn will simply speed up and make up some of that lost time when it's planted late. Switching gears to soybeans, first quick comment on beans is looking at varieties. Again, stick with your maturities. We actually see the fuller season soybeans continue to yield best regardless of planting date. You're looking at results from a 3-year PFR study on your screen there, and you can see that the 3.5 to 4.0 were our highest yielding at all three planting windows that we evaluated in that study. And so sticking with the plan there and your soybean maturities is going to make sense. Um, the thing that we do need to adjust with soybeans is populations. Once we get past the 20th of May, I think it's a good idea to be increasing our populations. The beans simply don't have as much time to grow as tall and put on as many nodes and as much potential yield. And so the way to help compensate for that is to put more plants out there. So my general rule of thumb is that after May 20th, we want to be increasing our soybean planting population by 10,000 per week and kind of max out around 200,000. If you look at our double crop population study, that's the most economic optimum population for double crop beans planted at the end of June when we did that at our southern PFR sites. And so I would stick with that as kind of the maximum. So be thinking about increasing those soybean populations. If you have any questions about these or any other agronomic topics as we navigate a delayed planting season, feel free to reach out to myself or your local Beck's representative, and we'd be happy to help. Best of luck and stay safe.